All right, hey, welcome everyone. This is Chris Petrie. Thanks so much for coming by. We're doing a beautiful boathouse along a coastal scene, gorgeous washes. We're going to show you all the techniques and methods you need to navigate through this painting. It's fun. We did it kind of quickly too. We didn't take too much time. We talked about things in this video like muting colors to make things more mellow with our color schemes. We talked about composition, how to draw this in pencil really easily. We show you a couple of really fun little tidbits of quick techniques to get a pencil drawing in really quickly and efficiently. We talked about the washes, the color mixes, and so much more. So get ready. We're going to do this painting quickly and have a fun time doing it. So we'll be right back. All right, we just saw the finished painting, and we're going to have a lot of fun enjoying the time here. I'm going to try to move at a fast pace here. I think I want to see if I can limit the amount of time I work on this composition. It's like again, a beautiful boathouse along the ocean, and there's some details, some decent details with the fencing and some of the posts and some of the weeds and grasses. And then the boathouse is kind of simple, but I have a piece of paper here. It's just a regular printer paper. And what I wanted to do was just in a quick second here is kind of just go over my my ideas on the drawing. So we could do, I would say if you've been drawing a long time, you can always, if you want to go at a fast pace and have your whole entire composition look like it's been done like quickly and with that kind of excitement of like speed going through everything. If you're used to drawing again, you can, draw the shack kind of quickly. Maybe, I'm thinking, I've been drawing a long time now for many, many years, so I can render things pretty quickly, maybe in this type of fashion of, and then we have the sand dunes coming down like this, and then this one's like that across this way, and then we have the ocean out here like this, which is just that beautiful bit of ocean on the left side of the boathouse here, and it's kind of obscured up here with this sand dune up here, which kind of looks good. Like it's kind of like you want to see over the top of this sand dune up here, but the ocean's here, so that's kind of an exciting little bit of information we can give to the viewer. So that's pretty much drawing it kind of quickly and putting in the windows here like that, and then I think there's a window over here too like that. So we can do it this way, kind of that quick sketch. And if we break it down, this is basically like a rectangle with a little bit of an angle upwards. So it's basically like a rectangle like this, but then we just have that little bit of an up angle like this here. And then this over here is kind of just an angle, not quite a 45-degree angle, but maybe a 30-degree angle, something like that. And then we have a triangle on top. So the triangle is kind of straightforward like that, and then this side of the roof is just another bit of lines, like a rectangle, lining these up like that. And then the same thing, we would follow that same line here like this to get the ridge of the roof up here. And then this over here kind of slopes down just a little bit on a little bit of an angle, so it's not level, it's a little bit on an angle like that. And voila, we have it. So that's another way you can do it. Thinking of it as just like basic shapes. Again, this is sort of like a rectangle here with a little bit of that angle up top. So even like a rectangle with a triangular shape on top. And sort of like that too here. So you almost have like a rectangular shape up here, a rectangular shape up, a pyramidal type shape here, another pyramidal type shape there. This is just basically a square. This is a triangle. It's a triangular shape too, I guess. and then across like that. And then the windows are basically just rectangles with a little bit of angle on them so that they feel like they're kind of getting diminished. They follow along the angles of this top fascia. Let's say the fascia board up here, the fascia board of the and where like maybe the gutters are, and the fascia of this wall. That's your top of your windows would follow that same angle, so it would follow that little bit of that angle like this. And contour drawing is the way I always draw, most likely. You'll always see me contour drawing, so I like to contour draw things. So if I contour draw, if I was, I'll get a new sheet of paper here. If I was contour drawing this, I think I'll sketch this one just because I wanted to show that style of drawing too. You can do that style like we did just now, but you could also contour drawing by just starting off in one location, and then I'm just going to look at my, I can't really put the boathouse on because it's actually a photograph I found online, and it has those little watermarks on the photograph, so they might shut my video off if I put it on the camera. So sometimes I can't always put the photographs of what I'm working from. So a contour drawing, I would just slowly put my and then I just slowly, I kind of make dots like this. Across like that. And then I'll finish up the roof by just going up slightly here. Make a dot and stop where I think I'm going to need to stop here, and then I start tracing over to this area, and then I come here and I look at this angle here and say, okay, I have to match that angle, so I'll do that like that. And then basically the windows are a little more same kind of thing. I would contour draw those in too, and I would just make sure I have that little bit of an angle upwards with the windows there. Maybe there's another window over here. That. Maybe we put some shutters on here. So we'll do this next. We'll make some shutters maybe on the windows, and we'll work with a little more detail. But I wanted to kind of keep the painting, the drawing and the painting going pretty quickly, so that we can just kind of have a real fun time and kind of see how it. We'll get the feel of like what it looks like and how it feels to kind of move through a painting really, really quickly. Because sometimes it's a lot of fun to do it that way. You know, it's like a little bit of a change. Sometimes we like to take our time. You know, the same way. Sometimes I take my time on certain paintings. You know, really get involved in a lot of detail and work at a slower pace. And then there's other times I'd like to just get a painting done really quickly and kind of just see the excitement of it. And kind of I have a little challenge in my mind of how many, you know, how can I do the least amount of work and get the most amount of excitement into the painting, but do the least amount of work, like the least amount of brush strokes and the least amount of fussing around too much with too many color mixes and things. So we're going to have such a fun time. All right, we're going to get started in just a second with the actual drawing and painting portion of the video. I just wanted to go over that sketching part first. I'm hoping you like that we go over the kind of the preliminary before we get started, like a couple ideas, maybe just to we bounce around here, and I'll just use my kneaded eraser and erase some of the pencil lines that I think drifted off the printer paper. So, and it's always a good thing too, you can always have a fun time and do a couple sketches before you go to do your final composition. It warms you up, and you kind of feel out some of those angles if you want to, or break things down a little more. You could take like we did here, I think on the first one here, you know, you could actually do something like this before you start your painting. If you're working from whatever, you know, like a photograph, or if you're on site and you're doing plein air painting outdoors, or if you're working from maybe, you know, a painting from another book or from online, wherever you get your sources from, your source information, you can always do some sketches, preliminary sketches, before you do anything. You do a couple of these and you kind of get used to things, look at things, kind of figure out maybe some of the angles. You could trace. Sometimes I trace too myself, just to get some angles correct if I find it's a very challenging scene or something like that. But no worries. You can always go in again and do a little bit of preliminary sketching like this before you start your finished work. And you can even, again, once you have this, you know, you can even, there's been times where if my sketch comes out really good, I might just like use a small pencil. Maybe we'll do that. I'll take let me see if I can find one of my, yeah, here it is. You could take like a pencil, like a mechanical pencil, and then you can kind of just go through and do the points of the, if you get your sketch good and it looks really good, you know, you could always say, oh, I'm going to use the points on the sketch that I just did, and you can push through on the points of your drawing. I remember as a young boy, we used to have the draw by dots. You know, you had those little books with the dots in them, and you could draw from those and then fill in the with crayons. We used to have a lot of fun. And then here maybe there's a point here where there's like that, and then you could even push through on the windows, just because if your window locations come out good on your first try when you do a sketch like this, why not? Let's stick with what works. So I'll just do that. I like this one here, this sketch, a lot, so I'm going to break through the paper again and just make sure I have all these points good. Okay, those are all good there. And then sure enough, I'm going to put one here and one over here for my ocean, and then my sand over here and over here, and then the same thing over here. I'm going to do a couple. And I'll put that right up here like this. All right, so let me take a quick break now. We've been doing a lot of work so far, but we've been actually making good time here. I don't think we've worked more than 15 minutes now on this, or 20 minutes at most. Okay, so we'll come back and we'll just keep working on this same idea of kind of working with something that already came out really good. If you draw a good sketch of something, why not just use it, right? So we'll do that next. All right, so we are going to get our pencils drawing in. And I guess there's going to be a certain amount of maybe, I guess we could vignette this a little bit. So I'll try to keep this in like the idea of, if our paper is, this is a compositional idea. Most people use this concept of, if you divide your paper in 4 sections, if you put the main subject matter in your painting in one of these 4 locations here, you're really in a good place. Sometimes in the middle looks a little bit too, it could look good there too, but these are the fun things we can work on, you know, compositionally once in a while when we're working on our paintings. But you know, these are really, if you kind of keep it in one of the 4 quadrants. So your main information, like here, we're going to do our shack up here. That's going to be the main place of interest for the painting, and then the rest is just going to kind of lead up to that. So that's a really nice composition to kind of do. Things are, you know, kind of moving to this one location. And the eye tends to start here on a painting. A lot of times our eyes tend to go to the top portion of a painting, maybe. Well, it depends on what's on there too, but that is sort of an idea anyway, so we can work with that. And so that's exactly, we're going to keep this up here in the, so if this is about halfway, it's right up in the top right hand corner. I'll just, again, I'm going to maybe bring in a little bit in there. Okay, I'm going to start just pushing through on my, I think I will use my original pencil, my mechanical pencil. And I'll just start from the left side and work my way all the way through this way. So I'm just going to go here and just keep working all of the dots that we poked through on the paper, and I'm going to do that. And you don't have to go really press too much, just a little tiny dot of, and you won't even see it once we paint the painting. You won't see it. So even if you make a dark dot here, so if you really press in there and make a really, doesn't matter, you can erase it a little. Once you start painting this scene, it's going to cover over all the dots and the pencil lines too as well. So we realize here, I guess, on the paper that we went out of the paper over here, but that's no big deal. And then I think we have it. Now what we can do is take our paper that we have here, we'll rest it down here, and then we'll kind of see if we can start to find the dots and the placement of everything. And I think so far we have it. So I'm just going to use this and keep looking at this, referencing it, seeing if I can see. This looks like this here. And then that there. And across here. And then maybe this goes up like so. This is here. I might have, yeah, I think I went off on an angle there. Not a big deal. You can erase a little bit if you have to. Okay. It's not going to be perfect, I don't think, every time, you know. Because when you put those dots on, it doesn't always really, you don't always get the warm and fuzzies when you're taking this off of here. And then I was kind of looking at this and, you know, so you don't have to worry about it. You can kind of, you can make those dots bigger if you want, darker, more definite than I did. But this is just an idea too of, you know, some things you can do. You can just draw it, especially if you've been drawing a long time. You're not going to worry too much about, maybe you can probably just you know, get this on the watercolor paper fine, and you're not going to have any issues. But this is here. Then I think the water was here. I probably will use a ruler actually for my water line. So I just take my ruler here and I go across. And I think the only thing I would do is I would probably measure. I would measure down here from the top down, just to where this is here, and then I'll do the same thing over on the left side over here. So here we're talking 3.5 inches, like that. I'm just going to work my way over this way, line my top of my rule up with my tape, 3.5 inches here, and that's pretty much all we need. And then it looks like it's going uphill, so I'm going to just look at my paper and try to do it by eye now. I think I need to go a little lower over here. So for some reason, sometimes measuring on the tape doesn't always look accurate, so you almost have to sometimes just work by eye and feel it out, but I think that's better. I think it would have looked like it was going uphill a little bit if I put it onto that line there. So measuring is just usually a basic reference, doesn't always have to be exact. Like that. Okay, so that's our ocean. And then we have, let's see, I think we'll come down like this and then just slowly, like that. Looks good, I think, at that point there. All right, so we are really moving along pretty good here. I think what we'll do is windows and some shutters on there, and the same thing here, maybe window here, shutter there, window and shutter. And they're not perfect, you can see that they're kind of angled a little bit, maybe more than they should be, but when we start painting it's going to work out okay. And then that window over here we had, we'll put a shutter there and a shutter over here. And again, you can work kind of expeditiously here. Maybe we'll make a larger window here like that, and we'll put the shutters like that, maybe like this. Okay, and I think that's good. I think that's all we need for the sketch. That's fine. Maybe there's a vent up here, a gable vent. there, like that. Okay. And you know what? I think we'll put a stovepipe over here. That looks always good. Okay, stovepipe there. Beautiful rustic boathouse here. I think we want to go with the pilings underneath, so let's do that. Let's lift up the house a little bit and make sure we can kind of show that there's some pilings there. That always looks good. And then I'll use a ruler here again, just to like that. Okay, and we'll leave some light under there, like sand and maybe some of the ocean even there. Yeah, I think the ocean, we can see the ocean through there. That'll be fine. Give it that real authentic look. And then you can always put in a couple lines just so that you remember when we're painting. Let's put in some, you know, like some wood vertical siding here. Like that, just a couple little indications of some lines. We'll put those in later with a fine brush. But again, we're not going to go too much with incredible details with this. We're going to try to go pretty quickly. I will try to make these boards here on the shack. I want to get those in anyway. The fascia boards and the rake boards here. That gives it a little more detail. I think it looks good if we can get a little bit of that detail of the trim on the house there. And we have the shutters, and that looks really good too. And then maybe even, I think we'll leave it at that. We won't go too much more on the details. And we have a nice little potbelly stove inside with a chimney pipe there. And I think that's it. What we'll do now is just quickly put in some indications of some fence posts. And I'll kind of put them where I see them here in the drawing here. So, and then maybe here. There's one here, and there's another one here. And what's interesting about this is there's the hurricane fences here and over here. Like that. And I think we'll go up higher with this one, like that. So there's hurricane fences over here. There's an opening here to walk through. And then the hurricane fences taper down into the sand over here. And maybe there's a few more here. And then there's another. And then these might get a little bit larger here, these posts. And that's what's fun. You're using the feeling of things getting smaller, going into the distance. And that usually works really well. And then we'll do one more here maybe. And I was drawing these freehand. Like that. And then some more hurricane fence here. And that is it. Plenty of details, and then we'll have some more fence posts over here. Maybe a couple more here. And then some weeds and grasses, and I think we'll just call it a day. We won't get, again, with incredible amounts of detail. I think we don't want to go too much, you know, with, and we'll use a fan brush to get some of our weeds in. We'll show you how you flick on your weeds when we do the painting. So we're all set here. We're ready to paint. We'll take another quick break, and then before I do that, I'll just hit the paints with a little spritzer bottle here. Some fresh, crystal clear water, nice fresh water. Just a quick little passing along here with the water, but I wouldn't flood this out with too much, so you just spritz it a couple times. That should be plenty. And then that sits for about a minute or two, and then when we come back, it'll be perfect. And then we can just start painting. And again, the whole idea here we're going to try to do is kind of get this done expeditiously. The painting is, you know, get it in as quick as possible, mix our colors first. That'll be like our first bit of work that we have to do is let's figure out our colors, get them all into the palette, and then once that's done, then we can go right in and get our painting in. All right, so we have our sketch done. We're good. We're going to mix our colors. Now, what I'll do is I will just mention that we're going to use the alla prima method, which will paint the whole thing at one time. This painting would be just as much fun doing the glazing technique, which would be making a really light, beautiful wash over the whole entire painting. You know, wetting the paper first with nice, clean, fresh, clean water, and then quickly going and getting that first light wash on of maybe, you know, some blues in the skies, and then get some like golden colors for the sand. You know, you could do that too. In my book, I do cover that. You'll see my book down below. I have all my paintings in my book, over 65 paintings. My best paintings I've ever painted. They're in my book, my new book. It's been out about 2 years now, my book. Hopefully you'll pick it up. It covers all the techniques I use, all the methods. So it's just basically like a user manual for watercolor. I don't get bogged down in tremendous detail in it, but enough that you're getting all the basic fundamental things you need. And then if you're watching my videos, it'll just be like, you know, a thing you can just reference once in a while. And of course, I hope you'll be painting my paintings in there, because you can paint those anytime you want. And lots of great work there that you can practice up your painting skills. And so let's get started. Colors, I think we're going to go with that beautiful brown wood shack with some orange in there. Some blue. We want to kind of get some cool and warm and cool all the time. So I'm using some French ultramarine blue here and some burnt umber for brown, and some red. Let's use some red in there. Even some of our like really cool red, that alizarin crimson looking red, and then our orangey red, and lots of brown, and some yellow even too. So you'll see that for the shack I've mixed a lot of different colors, but mostly the darks. I could even add some purple in there. That would look nice. And then we'll have that mixed. So that's for the shack. And then let's say for the roof, we're going to go with a little bit of a lighter color. So I'll pick up all these colors. We'll do that here. And then add a little bit of this blue. And we'll add this blue as well, and some of that dark color there, as well as some of the green. So we're going to want to mix all of these colors together that we're going to use. So you can kind of see I've used a lot of colors already. But you just take your time, mix it. You could even use less colors than I'm using. That's fine. But I just wanted to make sure that the roof is going to be lighter, so that's like this. A little more water, a little bit less paint. More paint, less water for the shack. We want the shack to be darker. And then the sand, we're going to go for some beautiful yellow. If there's a little green in there, that's not going to hurt, because we're going to go with orange here and some brown for the sand. Okay, so we're going to have sand. It's going to be light, but I will use my brush as like I dip it in the water to add more water. So you just use your brush and pick up water if you need a little more of a lighter mix like this. So you can see we're using a lighter, thinner, more water, less paint. And then when you have to, I'm always hoping you'll have a tissue on hand or a sponge or a paper towel. When you're mixing these colors here, the blues and the browns and the dark greens and the oranges and reds for that shack color, the color of the siding, wood siding, that rustic wood siding on the shack, that's when we would actually use very little water, almost no water, just straight paint almost. You'll get a little bit of water in there with a damp brush as you're mixing your paint, but you can see this is very thick paint, and you can see how this is pretty, you know, a lot more water in it, and that's for the sand. So, and then for the ocean colors, we'll do the ocean colors here. We're going to use the same blues that we used here, so we'll use the French ultramarine blue, some of that like cerulean looking blue there, a little bit of the green. We'll have some, even put in some of this green here too. For the ocean, we want to have some of that in there. And then some brown to gray these up a little bit. So I'll always use a little tiny bit of brown in my colors if we're going for that look. And we are going to go for that look in this painting. We're going to go for more of a grayed down look. Not too much maybe bright colors. We're going to keep the colors a little bit subdued. and see how it looks. We're just trying different things, that's all. I'm just trying something different here. Hopefully it's going to look good. And we got our colors mixed, so this is the colors of the whole painting. That's all we need. And if you need more to fill back the, if you need to add more paint, you just go to the same area. Yellow, go back into, the brown and yellow here. And then if it doesn't come out the way you like it, no problem. You lift up a little bit of the paint out of there. If for some reason you didn't rinse off the brush, I rinse off the brush a little better now. Maybe I'd lift out a little bit of that green. Some green got into my yellow paint there. And then we'll do that. Get that yellow again. A little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of brown. And then we have it. We're back with our really good looking sand color with a little bit of blue in there maybe. And that's it. Okay. We'll keep working now. Let's work with our darks. At this point, I dry off my brush. I rinse off my brush in the water container. I have a water container with clear water in it, fresh, clean water. I rinse off my brush. I come over here. I dry off a little bit of the water on my brush, and I go straight into this paint here, which is a dry brush basically, so that we don't dilute that too much. And then you just come over here. If it's not looking, if you need it more brown and orange and reddish, that's all. You just go back in. And what I'll do is I'll leave that little bit of, we can paint over, I think, certain things here, but we're going to paint around the windows. I'm using, again, this flat brush here. And brush skills are important. I show this in my book, too, as well. Learning how to control the brush really well so that you can do fine work like this. And it's just a matter of practicing some of the brush strokes. And I cover that in my book as well, so you'll have all the exercises you can do. And then you can paint right over the posts. We'll go over the posts later, maybe with a lighter color or a little bit of white. And then we try to, maybe the light's coming from this way across here, so we will make this a little lighter over here. And if you have a smaller section and you need a little bit of a smaller, I have other brushes here. These are from Simply Simmons, or actually no, this is Princeton Art and Brush Company. These are really fantastic. They're down below in the comments section below. I think the links to Amazon, and there's like maybe a 6 or 7 piece brush set. Princeton Art and Brush Company. You can see the wood tone handles, and you get like 2 of these flat brushes. You get 2 round brushes. You get like I think a couple of filbert brushes in there. So, but I'll use a little bit of that sand color, and we'll just come over here and we'll try to paint this in like that with that little bit of that sand color. So there's a little bit of more light on this side. That's all. Like that. And then the roof, we can add again that little bit of blue and green. We'll make the roof a little lighter. Maybe a bit of green looking wash there. You can add in a little bit of blue. You can add a little bit of orange to it. That's all. All right, so that would be a little bit lighter up here, I think. And it'd be a little bit darker over here. And you can make some overhangs there like that. And then what we'll do is we'll also take the brush, this same brush, dry off the paint, and then get a little bit of the golden sand color, and we'll just do our trim on this side over here. And I would just go over it quickly, nothing fancy, just so it's covered a little bit like that. I would take a little bit of the darker wash here, just to brush up a few spots I see here on the bottoms of the windows, like that. And there's a little bit of siding through here. And maybe we'll do a little bit of siding there too, like on that, like there. These I think we'll leave as is. Maybe we'll make these. And now this is already starting to dry. The washes are drying pretty quickly, so that's a kind of a positive for us. And I think that's good. And you can always, if the paint is dry, you feel free to go over with more washes or textures, or something that you want to do. But it's got to be dry first. You try not to paint over wet paint. Usually that's the rule of watercolor is we never try to paint over damp paper. You can do it really quickly once you put a wash on and then put something like another bit of color into a wash that you just put in like that. Over here, you can do that, a little bit of color maybe. But it's got to be right when you put that paint on. It can really get it can become an issue if we go with paint on top of damp paper, because then it makes awkward looking marks. And so these are one of those things we learn in watercolor as we go. And I still sometimes forget to do that step, but it's very important. Okay, so we have a little bit of a darker wash over here on this side of the building. The light's coming from here across this way. You can always, if you want to, put a little insignia on top. I usually do this all the time. That's a little bit light. I need a darker pen, but it's always a good thing. We just put a little bit of a spotlight like this. Put a spotlight with a bulb in it. And then that's going to always, whenever you're painting and you're in the middle of the painting process, you can always look and go, where's my light source? Oh, there it is. It's coming this way. And then you can quickly identify where your light and shadows are. All right, I tell you, I think we're going to take a quick break. And when we take our break, we'll be refreshed when we come back after about 10 or 15 minutes. And we'll start working on some more of the details. I think what we'll do next is the sand, the sky next after that. And then after that, we'll do the sea and then the posts last, the final details. Okay? All right, so we're almost there. All right, so we're continuing on here. We're going to actually work on the sky wash next. So I think the best thing to do with that is we could actually shift up to a little bit of a larger brush, actually. So something about, this is about 3/4 of an inch, and this one here we were using is a 1/2 inch. So we doubled the size here for our sky, I think. We'll do that. So I'll just start out. Maybe I'll empty my water container and pour in some fresh, clean water. So I always do that. Fresh, clean water goes in. After we work for a little while, we change out the water. And what we'll do is we'll wet the paper, pre-wet the paper, just a little bit in the sky over here. I think we'll get a nice effect with that. And what I'll do is I'll make sure that when I pre-wet the paper, I'm going to start here and paint a little bit away from the top of the roof of the boathouse here. So I start it and I just leave a little bit of space there so that our sky wash doesn't run into the boat shack. Just as a safeguard, we want to do that. So I just do that. I just dampen the paper with a damp brush. No need to add too much water, just a little bit. And I just do that along the whole roof area, just so, again, that water doesn't run into the roof of the boathouse. You can also, if you put too much on there, like if you find you're seeing like water puddling up along the top of that roof, not a big deal. You take a little bit of paper towel. I take my paper towel and I fold it up like this and make a crease on there. And then you can always just lift up that water. If it puddles up a little bit, not a problem. See how we do that? A little bit of lifting there, and good. Okay, now I'll do the same thing again, dampen up my brush, and I just do this. I actually take some damp water and just bring it across the whole paper. Damp brush, not too much water, damp brush, like that, and not everywhere, just in a few spots like that. And that's it. And then we come over here, sky wash, French ultramarine blue. Again, we're going to mix it up with a little bit of gray. We're going to use a little bit of the sand color too. Let's use that. And let's just get it in quick, right across like that. Blue, we need more blue. I'll go across here with some blue. Darken it up top there. I like it darker up at the top of the sky. Sky's usually always darker at the top. Okay, blue and a little bit of brown. Gray that up a little bit there. And then look at that. We get some clouds in there. I usually paint along the tape like that. And then I lift up a little bit there if I go over the top of the... Now I take a little bit of the orange over here with a damp brush, a little bit of orange. Usually orange is always prevalent at the bottom of the sky. Like that. Just a little bit of orange, and a little bit of water, not too much. And the same thing over here. I keep bumping into my my microphone over here. I have it too low on my table. I guess I set it up not the wrong way, but I just didn't realize when I set it up that it was going to be in the way. Anyway, it's life. Okay, so look at that. That's the sky we were looking for. You could even blot in, or even take a paper towel, a small piece of paper towel like this, fold it up, get even a little more dynamics to this. I fold it up into a good, and then you can even just do a couple. That's all. Adds a few little streaks into the sky, those cloud formations. All right, perfect. Now I'll go back to my 1/2-inch brush, rinse it off, dry off a little bit of the water, and I just want to take that same sky color and just put that in the one quick, a little bit of orange in this. So yeah, I think orange is going to look better there. So a little bit of that orange color. Like that. Just through the windows. You can blot up a little bit if you want, to give more light in the windows if you want. Looks pretty good. That's it. That's all we have to do there. If there's little bits of what you would think of as imperfections in your sky wash, like this white paper, I like that there. That to me is like, that's like classic watercolor. With a little bit of white paper there, you know, with some of those like broken edges, that dry brushy kind of look. Here and there, it's on the, you know, don't worry about those little anomalous type of marks on your paper. Those are fine. Those actually will look good in the end when we're done painting the whole painting. You'll look at it and be like, wow, it looks great. You know, sometimes when we're painting, we're so focused on like we want perfection, and then we'll start worrying about things like that, like some white paper showing up, but we want that. Trust me, that's going to look good. And we'll leave some of the same white marks on our paper in here in the sand areas too. So that means it'll be a part of the whole composition. So we just wouldn't leave that white paper with the dry brush like that just in the sky. We'll do some down here too. Okay. All right, so we're going to keep moving along here because we kind of have that separation between the sky and the sand. And the paper's drying quite quickly. It's warm in my studio, and we're not using a ton of water on our paper. We're painting alla prima, which again is painting all at one time. And usually when you do that, you have the paints drying quicker, so you can actually probably move faster through a painting like this. Okay, so more orange. We have the blue, brown, orange and brown. That's going to be that sand color. Mostly orange, brown together. A little bit of the yellow too. That's kind of warm, nice, beautiful yellow. I'll do this. It's kind of a golden brown. What I'll do is I think that looks fine. I'm not going to do anything with the sky. And then now we're going to pre-wet the paper again. You can use even a larger brush if you want to, but I think this will be fine. We'll use our large 1-inch like this. And then we're just going to do damp. I'll go right along the edge here where the sand is and where it meets the water. We're not going to paint into the water. And I would do the same thing. Just take some damp brush, a little bit of water in it, and just go on an angle across your paper like this. So we're kind of, you can notice we're doing angles like this all the way across the paper like this. That's going to be a nice feeling of leading ourselves into the painting like this, that angle. Okay, we've got that on the paper, some damp water, and then we do this. We get some of that sand color. Okay, we leave a little bit of white paper here and there. Okay, maybe a little bit more brown here, some blue, some green. Kind of get some of that greenish gray. It gets a little bit darker over here, our sand. And we're leaving white paper on this one. We're going to leave some white paper on this painting. We're not going to cover the whole paper. Some speckles here. I'm tapping my brush like this, very finely with some of this. And that gives us the feel of sand. And that's good. That'll be fine. A little bit of green in there. A little more green here. And that's fine. Now we're at the point where we have to let this dry. So let's do that. Let's take a break, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Let this dry a little bit, and then we're going to do the ocean next. And then once the ocean's done, we do our final details with some of the fencing, and we're all 100% complete. Alright, so let's finish up the water. I might use my round brush now, I think, for the water. So I'll use my travel brush here, my Charles Reed travel brush. Blue, green, French ultramarine blue, green. I will go with a little bit of brown and French ultramarine blue here to make a darker blue. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to make a darker blue at the very top of the ocean. And I'll just go right across like this with that really, really dark blue. And I'll just carefully have the top of my brush follow that pencil line, but I don't want to go above that pencil line. So I'm making sure I keep my hand resting on the paper. And that's another reason why it's great to let your paper dry. Now that this paper is dried down here, you can rest your hand right on here and get a really stable technique. I think the watercolor, I usually will always mention that my technique is to rest my hand on the paper whenever possible for fine details like this. I mean, if we're painting the sky, I'm going to maybe not as much resting my hand on the paper, but for something like this where I'm trying to get that nice dark greenish blue along the horizon of the ocean, I'm going to try to stick with that like so. And then once I get that in, then I can go with some of that bluish green here. Maybe I come down here too. And it's always, if you want to get a little bit of that ocean crashing wave look, you just dry off your brush a little bit on some paper towel or tissue, and then you drag your brush across like this, and then you get those like bits of broken white paper. And you can use a little bit of the side of the brush like this. Dry off the brush a little bit like that. And then I'd blend up to the top here. So I'd blend in that green to the dark area. And I'd leave white paper there too. Try to leave some of those whites in there for some crashing waves coming in. A little bit of a darker, maybe darker bit of paint underneath that white. Like that. So a little bit of bits of dark underneath the white. Alright, that looks fine to me. I think that looks really good. Again, we're keeping the colors kind of muted, a little bit grayed down. We're not going with really, we're trying to maybe have a subtle look to this painting, a nice subtle look. I'm putting some of the blue underneath the shack here. And we'll also put some dark underneath the shack for shadow. So I'll grab some brown here, back in here, some French ultramarine blue. We're going to try to go dark, and then some orange and red. So orange and red. If you need to spritz your paints another time, I do that every once in a while if I see they're starting to dry a little bit, and then more brown, more blue, a little bit of purple. And what we can do is get some shadowing under here. So we said the light was coming this way. So I'm going to take that and just quickly put in some shadowing underneath the... That's all we needed to do. A little bit of shadowing and we're all set. Now we can just use those same colors that we were using for that dark shadow. Why not? Let's stick with the same colors. A little bit of orange, brown, purple, blue, all the darks, right? Kind of that wood fence kind of look, right? And then we're just going to, I think we could go left to right. So I'll put the larger fence posts in here. And I'm just going to do quick, rest my hand on the paper and do quick like this, so that we're trying to get through this pretty good. Like we're not trying to take too much time. And then this here obviously is a little bit thicker of a post, so then we can just maybe do an upstroke like this. Again, covered in my book, these techniques of how to paint your details of your painting accurately, with confidence, and it's all about technique. I'm not just bragging that I know how to paint good or anything like that. I just have the techniques that I learned by practicing them over and over and over again, and I share them in my book so you get them too. You'll practice them and then you'll be painting just as probably better than I can do. And then we'll do a few more of these, and you notice how these are pretty good darks, right? These posts are nice and dark. That's what we want. And then we'll do the hurricane fences with even a finer brush. So you can get pretty fine with this, but I'm going to use a needlepoint brush to get the finer hurricane. Maybe over here we could, these hurricane bits here for hurricane fencing, you could add some red. Sometimes they have that little bit of that reddish color. It's like, I think, the preservative they put into it or something. So that's where we can get that little bit of red. And this will dry much lighter, usually when you're putting on like that. Okay, and then, like we did mention, we're going to use our Alvaro Castanet needlepoint brush. Hurricane fences here, and then that's how we can get these perfect, really incredibly fine lines, is with this needlepoint brush. You can't get that with a round brush, really, to be honest. And then I just try to, and then over here we did say there was a opening here, so we're gonna like that, and then there's a few more over here. And again, we're doing this expeditiously. This painting is, we're going to try to get it done quicker rather than taking a lot of time. And then a few more hurricane fence slats here and there. You could put a couple of wire type shapes here like this. Then over here you might see them, but beyond that we won't see them. And you have a little couple of like that. Then once we're done with that part of the paint, posts and the hurricane fencing, you could take more paint, darker paint, and then try to just do another couple of finer speckles of paint here on the foreground for that sand feel. I wouldn't put the sand speckles up high, just in the very lower portion of the painting here, like that. There we go. What else do we have now? We're going to do some details. We did mention we're going to have some details in the windows. So what we'll do is brown, reddish. You could use the reddish reddish brown that we created for the hurricane fencing, a little bit of orange. Then we go with some blue and purple, like this, blue and purple. A little more brown, a little bit of red, a little bit of green maybe too, like that. And then we dry that off on a paper towel or tissue, because we're going to do really fine lines. So we dry off most of the, we leave just a tiny bit of paint on the brush left. And then here we do this. We do a couple little quick like that. And then maybe here we just do some fine lines like this for the shutters. And this is how we move at a quicker pace, and we don't have to worry. You can always paint your shutters a different color if you want. Maybe we'll put a little blue in there once this dries. But now we're going to have to stick with letting this dry. Then we can come back at a later time. Like, you know, when it dries, then we can maybe paint some color onto the shutters if we want. But that's our, we have a nice chimney there. And we could do a little bit of darks under the eaves of the roof here. You could just add a little bit of these bits of detail at the end here. Just a little bit of dark underneath the eaves like that. You could do a little dark like that. Okay, the only thing we could do is purple. Dry off a little bit of the, and the shadows are very, it's like midday right now, so we're just gonna have a little bit of shadow here. And I'll just put them in the same direction. The shadows are gonna all go pretty much straight like this. And we just put them a little bit here and there. Doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that. And if we add those little bits of shadow, that's going to help the painting. Way out in the distance, we don't see them as much. But that's one thing in a painting. If you're creating shadows and light in a painting, we just remember to kind of keep our mind on where the light's coming from. So we put that little icon on the top of our painting, so we kind of keep an eye on it when we're painting and drawing, so we kind of know. So it's a good way just to keep a check on that. And then what else do we have? That little bit of shadowing helped. And what else did we could do a little bit of darker with our fine point brush. You can do a little bit of darker darks out here in the ocean. That's all. And I'm going to put a small sailboat out there with just a little bit of color, not much. It'll be very subtle. I'll put it, let's see, we have let's bring it over this way. Maybe a nice sailboat like that. And maybe the one more thing we can do is we can take a little bit of our titanium white, and we can put orange or yellow, just a tiny bit in the top, to make the white. Titanium white is pretty much stark white. Not much tint at all. There's no tint to it, just straight white. You add that little bit of orange or yellow, gold, and that warms it up, makes it look like sunlight. So that highlights that we're going to put on now. So we'll do a little bit of highlights here, maybe one on top of the chimney there, maybe up on top here. Just a little bit though, not too many of these, please. I used to add too many highlights like this and then I'd have problems. So with my painting, I'll put a couple on top of these posts. And we will put a couple figures in actually. We will do that next. But we're going to take a break now. We're going to take a break. Dip in a little more paint there. Yeah, I'm doing it sparingly though. I'm not really putting too much white on here, just enough to, I just wanted to add a few to the sides of the these pilings here. So the pilings have a little bit on the sides. Same thing with the shutters maybe. Maybe the shutters have a little dot of light. Not over here though, this is in shadow. But I think that's it. I think that's plenty of, you could put some more waves. Maybe some more wave type feel there. Kind of that feeling of the waves coming in, like that. Maybe a touch of highlight there. All right, next thing we're going to do is just a few figures, and then we're all set. Everything will be 100%. So I'll just take another quick break, and I'm going to figure out maybe just some strategic areas maybe to put a few figures in. I think other than that, this painting is perfect for what we wanted to do. A nice, quick, beautiful seascape with a boathouse and some details to it, some movement to it. We're feeling like the movement of the sky, and the light is good. We have some nice light in here with some sparkles of highlights. Shadowing, we did some good shadowing, midday shadowing, which is very, very minimal shadowing under the objects that we're painting. And I think that's about good. So let's come back, add a few figures to this, and then again, we'll call it a completed painting. And then at this point, if you like your painting, it comes out good, please put a mat on it, put it in a frame, enjoy it, and we'll be on to the next one too. Okay, let's be right back. All right, now what I'm going to do is actually, I will move my palette over just a little bit. And because at this point I can describe what colors I'm going to use. I'm not mixing a lot more colors now, but what I wanted to do is kind of zoom in a little bit. So I'll just lift my paper off the board I'm working on here. So I just lift up with and I'll reset this, and I'll zoom in my camera a little bit here, and this way I can kind of, I'll put this over here like this. But this way we can kind of see the details that we're going to put in now. Like this, and I'll just zoom in a little bit more. Okay, like that. Okay, that's good. I think that's fine. I just have to reset the tape. Okay, good. All right, so that's better now. Now it's a little bit closer, so we can draw in a figure or two. I think I'll draw a figure right over here. I'll put a head and shoulders and some legs, like so. And then once I have the head, the shoulders, and the legs, that's it. I can do the rest of the detail with a brush. So that's a figure here, and then maybe we'll put another figure over here, And we'll put a boat over here too. Let's put a boat over here like this. Like that. Like this. And maybe we'll put a figure in the boat. Maybe a ladder up here. And we'll have a figure in the boat like this. Just like that, doing some things in the boat. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think a boat with a figure, and then another figure over here. So what I'll do is I'll get a really fine brush here. This is I'm use my needlepoint brush here. And again, I'm just going to stick with darker colors, and we'll use the purplish blue here that we use, mixed in with a little bit of orange. And I'll do that. I'll put in the top of the body there, and the legs there like this. Okay, they might be doing something there, working on something in the front by the shack here. Then we'll take the other person there. So then now the next color of the next figure, I'm just going to make it a little bit cooler and lighter. So I'll make it more of a greenish color, kind of like cooler looking. And then maybe, I won't start getting into flesh tones or anything like that because this is pretty far in the distance here. So that's somebody in the boat there. They're working in the boat. And maybe for the boat, I might leave the boat with minimal color. I'm just going to put a ladder on there. So that's a ladder on the side of the boat, and then maybe a red stripe or an orange stripe on the boat. Like this. Like that. And then maybe a little bit of green for underneath. A little bit of that meridian green like that. Got to gray it down a little bit. That might be too much. Yeah, that would be too much color for... Yeah, we're trying to gray down our colors on this painting, so we don't want them too bright. But that's a nice green here for the boat over here. Like that. Maybe a darker dark here. I put some paint on my brush, dry it off here. And then we maybe make a little bit of a couple of things here. Just some lines, some rigging lines. Maybe we'll put a mast up here. Like that. Mast up here. Maybe a boom over here, like that. All right. Maybe another something over here too, so maybe there's another boat behind here. Maybe one more. That one's up a little bit higher. Maybe we take a bit of some orange. So I'm just picking up a little bit of color, maybe a little bit of a couple of burgees on there. A couple of rigging lines like that. Just quickly, some rigging lines, good enough. Looks fine. Okay, and then maybe just a little bit of shadow here for our figure. Okay. Maybe we'll put a little bit of orange, maybe an orange or red shirt here. A little bit interesting there, maybe a little bit of blue on this shirt here. So a little bit of colors there, no big deal. And if you splash a little bit on your painting, no big deal. You can always just a little bit of paper towel with a touch of water. You can rub off a color if you have to, or a splash or something if it goes wrong. And then one more thing, let's please add some fun seagulls, right? So we'll put them over here where most of the interesting things are right up here. We have other things going on in the painting, but this up here is really kind of where most of the excitement is. So let's do just a couple of small seagulls there, like that. And then there's a couple over here. And already I'm feeling better. Just doing a fun scene like this along the ocean. You know, the breeze, the ocean, all the good things at the shore. We've had a fun time here. You could always maybe put some darker wash up top, maybe where the windows are, closer to the top. Maybe a little bit of blue or green in these over here, this glass on the windows picks up the colors of the sky. If it doesn't look great, no problem. You just take a tissue, paper towel, and you just lift it up and blot it up a little bit. But I think everything is looking good. We had fun doing this. That's the main thing. And we learned some things about technique, about drawing, about mixing paint, composition. We kind of touch on things all the time on my videos. You're at the right place at the right time. If you're learning watercolor, we're going to keep on working on all your favorite media, watercolors. We do ink and wash once in a while, which is a lot of fun. Pencil drawing, pen and ink, again, really a lot of fun. We do that once in a while, but we do all your favorite subject matter. Seascapes like this, right? Boat paintings, flower paintings, landscape paintings, city scenes. We do a little bit of figure and portrait painting too every once in a while. So you get a little bit of everything here on my channel. I hope you'll enjoy our continued videos going forward. Subscribe if you feel you're happy and you want to learn more about watercolor. If it's your first time painting watercolor or contemplating watercolor, I think it's a great medium. You'll have so much fun with it. You can take it anywhere, vacation, weekend getaways, traveling. You can go to your family or friends' houses and bring a little watercolor sketchbook or something. If you get bored, you can, you know, or someone's arguing about things, about politics, you can always just do a little sketch or something and kind of get out of the way of the arguments and stuff. But in any case, well, let's continue to have fun with watercolor, and we're going to be back before you know it. Okay.